waiting on a few more to come over to the chat area. Let me know that you can hear everything a-okay, and share your name just in case that it's not showing on my screen. I have a couple listed as callers. Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining us this morning. All right, Amy, you could just let us know that you're here. If you can hear us, or if you need to dial back in, you can do that as well. If you are having any issues, please feel free to, if you can't contact or make any communication on screen, shoot me a text message and we can get things sorted out for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. The first thing I want to talk about is just take a look at everything in our text. I will be using the ebook just to illustrate a few things, and then I'll be working from our hard copy. The second thing that I would like to do with you is just go over a few simple concepts of Excel. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you're first getting started in Excel, especially if you haven't worked with it or any Microsoft programs before. So we're going to look at some of the simple features just to get you started, and then we're going to work through this project step by step. So feel free to unmute at any time, or if you would rather use your chat box, to ask any questions, and I can address those rather quickly. Okay. So looking at the screen, hello? Folks, please remember, I'm not sure if everyone's muted or not, but please make sure to mute your phone so we don't have any background noise on the lecture. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is take a look at pages EX2 and EX3 if you're working from your book. What I like about this textbook is it gives us an illustration of what our spreadsheet should look like when we're finished. So what you can see on my screen is we have, and I will zoom in just a little bit. Our top is our personal budget worksheet. And then what we're going to be doing there is merging some cells, formatting the Excel sheet. Hello? I still have somebody coming in with a little bit of background noise. So if you can double check to make sure that you are muted, I would appreciate it. Hi, Amy. I see your message. All right. So we'll get back to the screen here. The second thing that we're going to do in this worksheet is also create your pie chart that you'll see right there. So if you have any questions, like I said, once again, please feel free to go into the chat area, and I will be able to answer questions. Okay, Brianna, I see your message there. Okay. All right. So first what we want to do is open up a blank worksheet. So if everyone can take the time to do that, and if I need to slow down just a little bit, please just be sure to send me a little note over in our chat area. So this is our workbook. Whenever you open up Excel, you have a workbook. If we look down here at the bottom, which we'll be doing here shortly, we have sheet 1. That's our default sheet. We can add another sheet by using the plus sign down here, and that will create numerous worksheets within our workbook. So what I'm going to do first is flip over to page 6 for me. We're going to look at some of the information on the screen there. I'm going to open up a PowerPoint. And just go over our basic screen. As you can see across the top, you have your column headings going across with your letters, and then you have your row headings coming across the side. Now, these can easily be resized. We can, and that's something we'll do today, you can auto-fit them to where they all work together. When we look into our textbook, we're going to, in just about every spreadsheet you will create, you will have a worksheet title and sometimes even a subtitle. And then coming over to the side, if you look at the active cell over in the top left, wherever the little green box is around our cells means that is the active cell within our worksheet. So currently you can see that it is N9. Sometimes that can be a little bit tricky, and why I ask people to sometimes check and see what active cell that they are in is because when you're just keying your information in before you start formatting your worksheet, sometimes the text will run over, so it's a little misleading as to what cell your information is actually in. Now across the top we have our ribbon. Often your text will refer to the ribbon, which as you can see at the top you have your different tabs and it comes down to each ribbon. The book does a great job giving you directions as to where to find your buttons in your ribbon. So if you look on the home tab, it's illustrated here. We have the home ribbon, and then at the bottom of that ribbon, if you look, we have everything in sections. So you have clipboard, font, alignment, number, styles, cells, and editing. So when you're looking in your textbook and it gives you those directions, that should really help you narrow it down to the area it's in. Once you get in that area, and I'm going to switch back to my Excel screen here, you can let your mouse rest and it'll simply give you a screen tip as to what that action is for the button. So moving on, we've talked about our active cell. So if you notice here as I click around that it changes here, what we are going to do is we're going to make A1 the active cell. So what I'm going to do is split my screen just a little bit so I can still see our chat box. Does anyone need time to get their book to page 7 or to get Excel open? Okay, we're going to keep moving on here. So once again, going back to your textbook, I'm going to move through here. And where we start our project, let me scroll down. Would be to enter the worksheet title. So if you're using the ebook, this is where we would start. Now in your textbook, those will be, the numbers will be in red and the bullets will be in red as well. So I'm going to switch back to our Excel screen here. Oops. And we're going to begin. So in number 2 on page 7, we're going to type, and under that bullet list, let's type personal budget worksheet. Notice when I type that information, although it's in A1, without our cells or columns being resized, it looks like it goes across the other ones. But once we merge those cells, it'll all be in one. But if you're wanting to move that over, you could see that that's only in cell A1. But we'll just come up here and click the undo button and leave as is. So next, you can either use the arrow key to navigate down to the next row, or if you were in A1, you can hit enter, and that will also return down to the next line. And we're going to flip on to page EX8. So we have A2 as the active cell. I'm working from number 4 on page 8. And we want to key monthly estimates in here. Then make A3 the active cell. Now when a cell is active, you can double click so you can see your cursor. Or if I click out and click back in, if it's simply active, you can key in it. So we're going to type income into A3. This moves us across page 9 and onto page 10. So now we're going to make B3 the active cell. So you have two choices here again. You can either use your arrow key to move over to B3, or you could simply hit the tab key to move over as well. So what we want to key on page, in our worksheet from page 10, we're going to start entering our months for our budget. So we can key January. We're going to go over to C, February, and we're going to go all the way across row 3 until we enter all of our months. Oh, October. Once you're finished, that should lead us over to make N3 the active cell. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to get all of that information in. When you are finished keying that information in, if you could just send me a little message in chat, and then we'll move on. All right. Great. So now what we're going to do in N3, and this moves us along, or actually we're still at the bottom of page 10, getting ready to move into page 11. Just key total in your cell there. Now, a few things if you make a mistake. Clearly, you can use your backspace key to erase any text, but also if you have the cell active, what you can do is just hit delete, and it removes all of the text from the cell. So now we're going to return into A4. So we'll come over and make A4 our active cell. And then on page 11, it gives us the titles of what we need to list under our income section. So we want to key the word wages. And if you'd like to hit enter, that'll just simply move you down to A4. Excuse me, A5. Key dividends. And then total. Okay, now we're going to move into A8. I'd like for you to key the word expenses. Now, I would like to show you a trick here, a shortcut, so to speak. If we key the word January, you look down here in your box, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. When you're, let me make a good point here. If your cursor is active, if you all will take just a second to look up at your ribbon, you will notice a lot of your options are grayed out there. So if you're wondering why none of those buttons are active, it's because your cursor is active. So once you make your cursor inactive and just simply select the cell, you can see that they appear and you are able to use those again. So one thing that you will see used a lot in Excel is called the autofill handle. I know it does not give us an example of that just quite yet, but to save us a little bit of time and to show you all how neat that is, I'm going to go ahead and use it. Now, if you look at this little green square down here in the bottom right corner of the active cell, when I place my mouse over it, it turns into a black plus sign. So once we get that, that tells us that we're getting ready to use what we call the autofill handle. The autofill handle is used in a lot of different ways. What it does is it tries to read patterns, or in this case, if we have the word January there, it can acknowledge that that is a month. So if I click and hold down, and I'm going to drag across, you can see as a screen tip, it gives me February, March, April, and we can simply pull that all the way across. And when I release from clicking and dragging, it will insert all of those for me. If you would like to use that method, you are more than welcome to. If you would rather key them in, that is fine as well. Another option we have there, and simply a good friend of mine in Excel, is the undo button. So I'm going to come up here and click the undo button. And one more time. Now, with my white plus sign, I'm going to click and make B3 the active cell. Once I do that, that allows me to select one cell or multiple cells. So I'm going to click and drag all the way across to December. And then once I do that, I have the option to either right click to bring up the shortcut menu and I can copy. And then you will see the green highlighted area there. We can come down here to B3, or excuse me, B8, right click, and simply paste the text that way. Now, when you're finished pasting, you will still see the little ants marching animation around the text that you copied. You can simply hit the escape key, and that will deactivate that selection. So I'll give everyone just a minute to get caught up there before we move on. Actually, if you want to take a moment to go ahead, and we're going to key in our expenses. That will be at the bottom of page 11 in your text under the number 2. Okay, the next part that we're going to talk about is entering our data. Before we do that, I would like for you to flip over to page EX12. And for a moment, I just want to talk about the worksheet that we have in front of us. As you can see, it's a personal budget worksheet. Excel is a great tool to use professionally and personally. I actually keep my monthly budget in an Excel sheet. So if you see here, we have listed our income, and what we're getting ready to do is put in our data for our income for 12 months. And then we're going to come down and enter our expenses. Now, those will differ. Later in this session, we're going to talk about creating our own personal budget worksheet from that. So in your case, you would have to change up some of this information. But for now, we're going to go with what we have listed on our screen. So the first thing that I would like for you to do, we're just going to make things a little easier. We're going to expand this column just a little bit. So if you'll come and place your mouse between the A and B column headings, you should get the double-headed arrow icon that you see on my screen. We're going to click and drag and bring that line out just a little bit past entertainment. Sometimes that creates some issues in Excel when you're trying to enter data. So let's make B4 our active cell. If you look on page 12, it's going to give us the information to enter for our incomes and for our expenses. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is just key in the $1,000.29. Right now, we're not going to put any dollar signs. We're going to use a formatting option to add that in once we're finished keying in our data. Now we have two options from here. As you can see on page 12 in the illustration, we have $1,000.29 all the way across for our wages. So if we'd like to make that inactive and then come back to that cell, we can come down here again, get our black plus sign for our autofill handle, click and drag, and it will copy that. Since it really can't determine a pattern there, it simply just copies the content of this cell. So we're going to copy that all the way over to December. If you would like to key the information, that's fine. If you're having a hard time using the autofill, simply come up here to your undo button, click the undo button until you get back to the place you want to start from again. Does anyone have any questions on the autofill? And once again, if you have any questions to our session, please feel free to use the chat area to do so. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a couple minutes, and if you'll just let me know once you get finished up, and you can use the autofill feature or you can key in, but using the illustration in your book on page 12, we're going to go ahead and enter in the rest of our data. And if you'd like to follow through or follow along with me on the screen, that's fine as well. Keep in mind to use a decimal point for the cents while we're entering our data. So we have a 0 here, and we have several zeros. So I'm going to run these zeros all the way over to August using the autofill feature. Remember, you can simply just key the information and use the tab key to move across. We can use that autofill feature on rent because we know that it's going to be the same every month. In our budget, we set aside $300 every month for food as well. Bring that across. When you get finished up entering your data, just please give me a little note over here in our chat box, and then we'll move forward. Okay. We are going to move on to page 14. So right now we have all of our information entered into our worksheet. Now the awesome thing about Excel is that you can enter calculations, so we can have it add, multiply, divide, subtract for us, and there are even functions that you'll come into in the second chapter that perform a lot of different operations for you. So we're going to use the simple sum operation or feature right now. So what we want to do is we want to know the total income for each month. So making B6 our active cell, we are simply going to come up here to the top, and if we bring this over just a little bit, you can see we have an auto sum button here. Now I'm going to go ahead and click that auto sum. What it does is it highlights the cells that it thinks should be in the equation. Sometimes that's not always accurate. So if it isn't, for whatever reason, in our case right here it is, you can simply click on the corner and adjust that. Now I just want to take a moment to talk about the actual formula that you see here. Anytime you are going to use a formula in Excel, you have to have the equal sign. When you key the equal sign in, that automatically tells Excel, hey, I'm getting ready to perform a calculation or insert a function. So it's critical to have that there. In this case, we're going to use a formula that's already embedded in Word. So it has sum keyed there in all caps, and then the parentheses. And then, of course, it has B4. And to close that up, so you can see that it added the value here, and we still see the formula. And you can also and if for any reason, like simply hit your escape key So at this point, and we have our expenses total. So look at that and say, okay, we have our income. Let's take our total to see what money we have left over at the end. Use first when you're doing this, you have to determine. So we are going to need our total of excuse me, let's make A1. We're going to bold your text on group. To click the bold button, or any format. So what we're going to do is we're going to do tab, which is still be active. And once again, if we let our mouse rest, you can see comma style, and this will increase. So we simply want to select the accounting number format for us. We'll do that in N4 or B4 through N4, for B6 through N6. Asks us to do the same for row through N9, row, and one last time to our net row. If you notice in the accounting form balance with the parentheses are okay. Now we are going to flip over 33 and in number 4 listed for the remaining style instead. So let's select, and we want to come up here in the number. So you can notice that it added a tab where we had C replay inserted a dash. So we have finished our worksheet. If you have any questions about our worksheet before chat area and enter that in for me. We'll do what are your methods? You just gotta find what's comfortable for you. Individual area, or you can go ahead and select the clock and drag all the way across between one of the cells. Once I have this, if you double click, and of course I didn't make any movements, all of those cells. You're welcome. We're going to create the pie chart. This can be a little tricky getting charts. One wrong, inaccurate data in your pie chart. So what we want to do, and we want to create a pie so we can see, how much of our money, spending the most money. Are we spending our most money on food or rent? What we're going to do is A9, and we're going to A16. What gives that information for the legend pie chart? So now, great, just kind of, and you want to let your mouse just rest over control key, and then we're going to click. So this touches on our discussion of being able to select knowledge if we would like, but this is also the method that you would have. Once we have that code, once we have those ranges, once again, it is critical that you first select, as you select everything, come back to A9, we're going to click Control key. A lot of get 40. Now we're just going to format a little bit. Area on your chart. You can see that we have these options come open here. Now you can do this two different ways. You can see that whenever you enter a chart, you get. So it wants us to select, and this is on page 40. Come over to the far right. Now, if you look on page 41, select new sheet. And we want to give that sheet into page 42 at the top. And now you can notice it moves us into that new one, and then your monthly expenses. Okay, so we'll make that our active sheet. Look at the bottom of page 42 under number 1 and budget. You key that and you can hit enter. And if you right click on the monthly budget plan, change that to the blue. monthly budget planner too. This and you could just use budget planner if you can. See, runs us into completing part 2. Now, what we'd like for you to do here, just so I just your last name, your first and last name. Then come over if you'd like to add anything here. You can do the information. And it does not have to be your monthly budget, but you could use this. You can find ways to implement it, and as well, from Chapter 1 project. And this total, so it affects anything that's tied into B6. It changed in all these as well. It changed here in our does anyone have any personal budget sheet? Okay, so we're going to go over to sometimes see your text referred to it as save as you do this in my documents week 1 save loading. Please keep in mind to make sure your file is closed. And that wraps. I just want to visit the chat area again for the session today. Okay, today if you